Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome to Positive Talk, everybody. My name is Kevin McDonald, and we've got a great show for you today. This gentleman has been on the show before, and we had to have him back because he's got such an interesting story at such a tender age that I wanted to talk to him more about his travels, and he's been to more countries than he's old. I think he's been to 35 countries, and there's no way that you're 35 years old. And by the way, his name is Philip Wilder. Philip, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. And it's not that hard to go to many countries when I'm at such a tender age.
Well, that's true. And but did you have like a bicycle or a motorcycle or a car, or did you take buses to all those places?
No, pretty much all of them I flew to.
Oh,
It's funny,
okay.
once you get to Europe or Asia, it's a whole lot easier to get to other countries because it's like a 45-minute flight sometimes. Or I guess I did take a train from one country to another, but yeah, most times it was flying. So didn't have a motorcycle, though that would be pretty cool.
So now I've been to in my life, I used to travel for a living, and I've been to three countries.
Okay.
Mexico for a half a day, and Canada. Haven't been overseas and stuff like that because now they're making it harder. Have you noticed that?
How so?
Have you got your enhanced driver's license yet?
I think so, yeah. Well, you need a passport to leave the country.
Or you can have an enhanced driver's license, and then you can go to Canada and Mexico and stuff like
Oh,
that.
gotcha. Yeah.
But I don't even have a passport. I don't have any desire to go because my son's in England, and they drive on the wrong side of the street, and I would probably get into an accident if I tried.
Well, that's why you take taxis.
I
Or Uber now.
Yeah, but he's on a military base, which is an hour away
Oh.
from anything else and stuff. So anyway, enough of that. But by the way, this young man has done a lot of stuff. He's been a missionary. He's an author. He's got a new book that is coming out. And is it out now?
Yeah, it came out February 25th of this year,
And
so
how's
just
it
about 3
doing?
months ago.
How's it doing?
It's doing great. I mean, I went on a speaking tour and sold quite a few copies there. So yeah, it's doing better than I expected, which is awesome, and getting lots of good reviews. And it's always, so here's the thing that I tell a lot of people: as an author, you create this whole world in your head, and you don't really get to share that world with anyone. Like, yes, my wife, and yes, a few close friends, but for the most part, most of the people that I know have no idea the world that you've been living in for the past 2 or so years. And so finally getting this book, I was like, now you can finally understand this world that I've been living in, that I created. And so it's really fun. I just last week was writing at a coffee shop, and someone came into the coffee shop and like, oh my gosh, that's the author of the book I'm reading, and started talking to me. He's like, wow, this is cool. Like, I actually can talk to somebody about what I'm writing and about this world here, which is really fun.
Look at that. You're going to be famous.
Well, famous is all in degrees, and we're all famous to some degree. So
That's exactly right. Now, the name of the book is Single Isn't Second Best, Shifting the Perspective as a Christian Singleness. Well, what is the premise of the book? Because in my world, single isn't second best.
well, yeah, that's the premise of the book. Single isn't second best.
So my point there is, are there people who believe that single is second best?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
Definitely. Tons of people, far more than you might think. And oftentimes what I've found out is a lot of people don't realize that they view singleness as second best. So, for example, so I did get married, and it was only after marriage that I really felt like I could do singleness justice, because before that, I totally idolized marriage, and I love my wife. She's amazing. However, humans have this natural tendency to think that this thing that we don't have is going to be that magic key that makes our lives perfect.
That's on
And
every car dealership in the country. They use that
yes,
as
and every commercial as well too. You see it everywhere. And so that's the case. Like, if you've never been in a relationship, it is very easy, based off of Hollywood and like just all the things you see around you, to think that a relationship, that getting married will fix all of your problems, because you've never had it fail you. Now, I will not say that marriage has failed me, because I love my wife and I love being married. However, I can say that it is not that magic key to suddenly make the world perfect. There are still problems. It brings new problems into the mix. It solves old problems, some old problems, not all old problems. And so a lot of people, this is what I encountered a lot when I was doing my missions work. People would talk to me and be like, "Oh, how old are you?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm 24, 25." And like, "Okay, and are you dating someone?" And I'd be like, "No." And they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." It's like, you just presumed that that's a problem in my life. I said nothing about it being a problem. They just presume like, "Oh, you're not dating anyone, you're not married." Like, I'm sorry that that's the case for you. It's like, I didn't say that that was a problem in my life. And in a lot of other cases, like, I mean, just look at Hollywood in so many ways. Like, it's starting to shift a little bit away from that, maybe more than is helpful. I don't know, but oftentimes in movies, the pinnacle of the movie is like these two people finally get together, and then they play that happy romantic music, and then everything is perfect. And so I just thought, before, because I had never even had a girlfriend before I turned 25. Like, no one was willing to date me for some reason. And that's another thing that comes up out of it, is people, if you've never dated someone, they start wondering like, well, what's wrong with you? Like, is there some glaring character flaw that we don't see that you have that's turning every girl away? Or like, maybe you're gay or something. And it's like, wait, what? Like,
and and
anyways.
and by the way, I want to make everybody clear that it's okay if you're gay. That I don't care. You're fine. But no, I get what you're saying, because when you are reaching a certain age and your charms don't seem to be attracting or the honey that you're presenting isn't attracting the honey
Right.
bees that you want around you. You do start thinking about what's wrong with me, and then you find somebody that you didn't really love, but you went and married him anyway, and then you're like, oh my god, what have I done? So it is something that we need to teach our children, that it's okay to be single, don't we?
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, the whole point behind this book is marriage is great and singleness is great. So, how can we learn to make the life that we're living right now positive and healthy? And especially for Christians, like, how can we trust God with whatever path he leads us down? Like, maybe he leads you towards singleness, maybe he leads you to marriage, but whatever the case may be, like, he's got something good planned for you. And so I actually co-wrote this book with my friend. Her pen name is CE White. And it's interesting how opposite our perspectives were of singleness, because she didn't want to get married. And she actually broke off 2 engagements. She ended up getting married, I think, at the age of like 37 or something. But she didn't want to get married because she didn't want that sort of commitment. And I, however, on the other hand, was like basically desperate trying to get married. And that's probably what turned most of the girls off, because they're like, whoa, hold on here, sir. So it's really fun writing this book with her, because we have such different perspectives and yet the same conclusion. And so it was really neat how it all came about, because different people will be like, oh my gosh, like, I really connected with her chapters. Other people will be like, I really connected with your chapters. And it makes sense because they're coming at the book from different perspectives. And one of the other reasons why I really wanted to co-write this with her, which actually she's the one who came up with the idea, and then I like begged her to let me write it with her, is because if a girl writes it, it's only going to be for girls. If a guy writes it, it's only going to be for guys, because there are certain topics that only a guy can speak on and only a girl can speak on. And so by coming together, we made a book that works for everyone. Yeah, there's some chapters that are going to apply more to guys and some chapters that are going to apply more to girls. But it's been really cool to see how it all worked out, and it's been a fun book. Some of the reviews on Amazon have been very encouraging. People who are like, I thought for years that there was some sort of problem with me, and then finally, after reading your book, I realized, like, what, this is just the path that God has for me. Like, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with me. It just means that God has a unique path for me, and that's okay. So we're very grateful with how the book has come about and how the book is impacting people.
Now, in the book, do you address the fact that there is an unevenness to men and women in dating relationships and in seeking dates and then getting, like, as an example, your co-author had been engaged twice, and you couldn't get a date. Now, that's not because you're a bad guy, but it's because you are a guy. And if a guy doesn't know how to attract the females that may be interested in him because he doesn't have the experience and nobody teaches him that, whereas a woman can just walk down the street and be pretty and she gets all kinds of people asking her out on a date. In my opinion, that's the difference between men and women, young men and women. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. We don't talk so much about that. We don't want to talk, like, we tried to talk as little as possible about dating and about marriage because we wanted to focus on singleness. So yeah, we don't talk too much about the disparity there, but it's interesting because it really depends on what circle you're in. Like, that might have been your experience. However, for me, which even goes further to say, like, what was going on there in the mission field, it's like 2/3 women and 1/3 men. So the odds are pretty good as far as like going and doing missions work. I can't say for all religions or whatever, but like at least being a Christian, non-denominational, like the odds were in my favor, and yet somehow that didn't even work for me. So it wasn't until after I came back that I ended up meeting my wife.
Yeah, but as you know, Philip, it depends upon how you present yourself to those people or what your goals are and what their goals are. Now, I would assume, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you are a female and you are a missionary and you're on a bit of a mission, which is why you're a missionary. You're on a mission to achieve what you're set out to do, and having a relationship or a romantic relationship or something like that is kind of a back burner issue. Would that be true?
It can be. I mean,
You didn't have any missionary.
careful.
I'm sorry.
You definitely want to be more careful as far as who you date or how that all goes. I don't know people are people. Like, you could get the least emotional person on the planet and they'll still want to have a companion in life. So especially being in a foreign place where most people are different from you, like, you just crave that, like, that close companionship, whether that be in a friend or whether that be in a spouse, whatever. So I can't say that was my experience. I can say that one of the things I encountered is, like, yeah, sure, maybe the odds are like 2-1, like 2 women to every guy, but you're oftentimes in like small isolated pockets.
Yeah.
And so for my case, like, yeah, my team, the biggest my ministry team ever was like 12 people. And that's not a very big group of people to like have many options with, if that makes sense. Like, sure, there are, like, the odds are quote unquote in your favor, but you don't get a chance really to meet all those people because you're mostly stuck in your own group, which, I mean, not stuck necessarily. It's just naturally it gets filtered out that way. Like, and it depends on where you're at. Like, if you're in Europe, it would be a bit of a different story because there's a lot of cross working
Pollination.
together. Yeah,
Oh,
well, I don't want to use that in terms of dating.
no, I get it. I get
Like
it. Well,
working
and
together with different ministries, but in regards to like, because I was in the Middle East, so it's a little bit more like hush hush. Like, can we trust these people? You know, like, are these people trustworthy? Who are these people? So, yeah.
well, and you wouldn't want to date anybody who was a indigenous person there, because you don't know who her uncles are, or her extended family, or what's gonna, and also the cultures are so different. You don't know
Right.
what's going to be accepted and not going to be accepted, and all that kind of good stuff. Um,
Yeah, that's definitely true. However, I can say, at least where I was at, and in a lot of places around the world, families would love for their children to marry an American.
well, sure, there's more money there.
Right. And it's like a free citizenship right there if you marry an American. So there's not so much of a hesitancy. It definitely depends on where you're at in the Middle East, of course. There are some places where they're not very fond of Americans,
You
but
think?
yeah, cultural differences is a significant thing, and you got to know what you're getting into with that.
And by the way, we're talking with Philip Wilder, and he spent 2 years in the Middle East, and he won't even tell me where in the Middle East. And so I'm not going to ask him, because I don't want somebody to come chop my arm off or something. So I've already lost it.
Well,
So,
that wouldn't happen, but
you never, yeah, I know. But anyway, he's an author, and he is a really good guy. And he's also what you would call an adventurer. And so we're going to talk about all of his adventures. As a matter of fact, we did a 15-minute meeting, which we do with a lot of our guests, and he called from the mountain. I don't know what mountain it was, but we did part of it because he lost connection because he was on the mountain. And so we're going to talk about that and him and all the things that he's done. And we'll be right back. By the way, Philip, have you ever thought about being a real estate agent?
I have not.
Well, there's a gentleman that if you ever decided to, and if you are a real estate agent, or you think you are and you want to be and you don't know how, well, I got a guy that's going to help you. And then listen to this and then give him a call.
You became a real estate agent for freedom, success, and real momentum. So why are you still stuck waiting for closings to save you? I'm Ophir Adar, founder of Real Momentum, and I help agents like you become seven-figure earners. My first client that I coached, brand new agent, made $250,000 back in 2006. What's the secret? You feed your white wolf. That's the part of you that's bold and unstoppable and a closer and able to build rapport quickly. So click Get Listings at Real Momentum and let's unleash your real estate potential.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. And my guest today is Philip Wilder. By the way, that's your real name, right?
It is not.
Oh, dang it. I was going to say, what a great name that you,
Yes.
but it is a great name. So, and it's a
It
great
is
author's name.
yeah, I'm glad I picked it.
I'm
Philip
glad
is my real name, but Wilder is not.
I well, don't even care. We're going to call you Philip Wilder because you're going to be famous for that. And you're also an adventurer. Tell us some of the adventures that you've had going different places.
Yeah, well, I lived in the Middle East for 2 years, and here, I'll share my craziest story. When I was in the Middle East, every month we have a thing called a day with the Lord. So just kind of a day for us to connect with God, and that was our job. Well, our job description for that day. And so I liked going on hikes because I'm from Colorado. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go on a hike. I don't really know this place much at all. So I'm just going to start walking. I looked up on Google Maps and saw that there were trees kind of nearby. So I figured let's just walk that way. So I started walking and I found a really cool view, which was cool. And then I found these horse stables, which were pretty cool. And then this is where it gets crazy. I start walking along this path. Again, I hadn't jumped any fences or anything, just was walking along on a path, like a well-trodden path through these trees. And I look over to my right. There's a chain linked fence. On the other side of a chain linked fence appears a wolf. And he starts walking beside me. And I thought, I didn't know the Middle East had wolves, but okay. So I just kept walking. A little bit later, I come to a crossroads, and across the road, I see tigers. And then I see monkeys, and I see lions. And I'm looking around like, okay, I'm in a zoo. Cool. Somehow I ended up in a zoo. I look around, there's no one there. Absolutely no one. I like yell out, like, hello, like, is anyone here? There's no one there. And all of these animals, these wolves, these lions, these tigers, later I found a bear and a hyena. All of them were behind simple chain linked fences that were like 20 feet high. And I'm thinking, where am I? What just happened? And there's like 20 monkeys in this little cage. And so I go and sit down with these monkeys. They come to the edge of the cage, like all happy. And I was like, okay, this must be a zoo, but like, why is there no one here? And why are there, I think there was like maybe 10, 12 lions and 2 tigers. And later I found like a total of like 6 wolves. It was so confusing. And yeah, this was my first month leaving the US because I moved from the US to live in the Middle East for 2 years. And so this is my first month out of the US ever. And here I stumble across this zoo where there's like no one around to ask what is going on with the zoo and what's up with all these animals. And so I just sit down right there and I start reading my Bible. I start reading the story of Noah's Ark because I was like, it's like a Noah's Ark reunion party right here. And after a little bit, I kind of felt God saying like, hey, it's time to move on. And like, but like, how could you possibly get anything better than this? The 2 previous spots that I had stopped at, like one with the view, one with the horses, like those were both like really cool spots too, that I was going to be like, I'm going to spend the rest of this day here. But then I felt God leading me on, like, no, I got something better. I was like, there's no way you can top this. And I said that twice. So this is my 3rd time. I was like, God, there's no way you can top this like random zoo that like no one's at. Like, how could you possibly top this? This is the craziest, funniest thing I've ever experienced. But I was like, I've already said this 2 times, so I'm going to trust God and I'm going to keep walking. So I keep walking. It starts to get dark at this point. I'd like walked probably like 7-8 miles at this point. I was coming back into the city and I was like, okay, I need to find a taxi, but like these are all pretty back roads here. So I need to take this shortcut over here to like this main road so I can maybe get a taxi there. Google Maps isn't saying that I should take that way to get back home. It's telling me to like take this longer route around. And it's like, course, Google Maps. I was like, but whatever, this road goes straight through. Like, I'm going to take this road. So this road goes up over a hill. It's through like a little neighborhood, like no big deal, right? I start following this road over this hill and this dog in this porch starts barking at me. It's like, okay, he's just protecting his property. Like he knows that that's his property. I'm just going to stay on this other side of the road. And it's barking pretty ferociously. But I keep walking. As I pass the dog's house, it's like an apartment building. The dog starts following me and keeps barking at me like, you are not supposed to be here. It's like, how do you know? This is a through street. Like there's tons of people here. I get to the top of the hill and I look down and I notice that there's a 12-foot high wall separating me from that road that this road's supposed to connect to, at least that I thought it connected to, that Google Maps knew it didn't connect to. And, you know, I like to think that I'm an adventurer and athletic, but 12 feet high, I can't climb that. That is too high of a wall. There was a big pile of trash at the base of this hill, well, at the base of this wall. So I thought maybe I could climb up that pile of trash and get to the other side. I mean, not ideal, right? But also like this dog is like barking at me and chasing me. Like that's not okay. So I decide like, okay, I'm going to climb up a pile of trash and get over this wall, you know, so be it. So I keep walking. Every now and then I have to turn around. Like this dog will start barking at me and start charging at me. And so like every like 15, 20 steps, I have to turn around and stare this dog down to get it to stop charging at me. And thank you. And so I was like, what do I do? So I kept walking. I was like, I can't go back that way. This wall is my only way out. Like, there's apartment buildings on this side. On the other side, there's this olive grove. And it's like, okay, like if this dog is like mad at me for being on the road, what is it going to do if I go into this private olive grove? Like, so anyways, I go down the hill. I realize like there's no way I'm going to be able to climb up this pile of trash. Like, I got to cut into this olive grove. The dog is still barking at me and sometimes charging at me, and I have to stare it down to get it to stop charging at me. I have worship music playing in my ear. It's the sun had set. And so like, it's this crazy moment of like, I was both like kind of terrified, but also like having an absolute blast. I was like, this is so fun. Like, how am I going to get out of this? So I start trespassing officially. I mean, probably before at the zoo, I was probably trespassing.
More than likely. Yep.
Yeah. But I didn't see any. I mean, maybe I just couldn't read the signs. I don't know. I didn't see anything that made it obvious that I shouldn't keep walking along this path before. And so anyways, I'm on a public road. So I start trespassing because I don't want to get eaten. It seems like the better of the two options. You know, it's like probably a human will better understand my situation than the dog.
Maybe.
Even if I can't speak the same language, I'm sure we can communicate somehow. So I start trespassing, go through this olive grove, and I find this 8-foot tall chain link fence. And I'm like, oh, thank goodness, because it connects to the wall, which means I can climb up 8 feet. And then that leaves only 4 feet to get over this other 12-foot high wall. So climb up this 8-foot high chain link fence, get to the top, and I look up, and there's a security camera pointing straight at me. And fortunately, it was dark. And for some reason, I had my hood drawn. I never like wearing hoods, but I had my hood drawn, maybe because I knew I probably needed it because I was trespassing and I didn't want anyone to know who I was. So I get to the top of this chain link fence, make eye contact with the security camera, pray to God that it's dark enough that they can't recognize me, and wonder, why did they have security cameras in this olive grove? Like, what is going on? Climb over the fence, jump to the other side, and I get up and look around. There is the road that I was expecting, except the grass is like 3 feet high, growing through cracks in the road. And I'm like, okay, this is not right. I look just a little bit beyond it. Another 12-foot high wall. So I zoom into Google Maps and I'm like, okay, for sure, this is the last wall I'm going to have to climb, right? Like, right? Because I thought this before. I zoom in. Sure enough, the road I was hoping to get to that'll bring me home was on the other side of that 12-foot high wall. So I was like, okay, this is my last wall. And no more jumping walls after this one. So I go over to the wall. There's like a big fallen tree that's like 4 feet high. So it's like, okay, 8 feet. I could maybe jump, and I'm not a tall guy. I'm 5'8". Not that impressive. That's maybe why no one would date me. Anyways, I got to this tree had fallen over. The stump is like 4 feet off the ground, but it's not right next to the wall. So I'd have to like jump toward the wall, try and grab the top. So I estimate like, 50% chance I'll grab the top of the wall and be able to pull myself up. 50% chance I'll fall and twist my ankle, which, knowing that I was probably still trespassing, did not sound very appealing. But I was like, but I'd really like to get out of here. Like 50% is still pretty good. Like, I think I could maybe jump up and grab the top of this wall. I decided, like, you know what? There's no one here. I probably still have some time. Like, I'm going to go scout further along this wall to see if there's another spot to climb over this wall. Walk down the wall a little ways, and there's a doorway through the wall. I'm like, well, there we go. I walked through the doorway. People here in America might not understand this, but it was a guard post. So what it is it's a door in the wall that you go through, and it just leads to, it's a dead end. But there's windows on the other side, so you can patrol the other side while still being on that back side of the wall. So I could see what was on the other side, and sure enough, that road was there. But I look right back to where I was about to jump up on the road with very little Arabic speaking skills at night with a backpack, with my hood drawn, and I see an armed checkpoint. Like these little checkpoint gates down, armed guards, probably 5 to 8 of them, like all decked out in tactical gear. They look serious, big lights beaming down on them. And I'm thinking, where am I? What is this place? Like, I was in a residential road. Okay, yes, I climbed a chain link fence, jumped over a wall, and I'm now trying to jump over another wall. But like, aren't I in the middle of the city? Why is there this armed checkpoint right here? I'm like, okay, well, I'm glad I didn't try that 50-50 chance of jumping up onto the wall, because there's no way I would have been able to explain myself out of that situation. Like, that is the sketchiest thing that they could have ever seen.
Yep.
So I continue walking further down the wall, and I find a tree that's leaning up against the wall. So I can climb up the tree, drop onto the wall, and then lower myself down onto the other side. And I like don't run, but I walk very quickly to try and find a taxi and get out of there. I do get out of there. I get home. The government's never contacted me or anything, so I'm good. But I talked to my friend later, and I'm like, where was I? What is this place? I zoom in and then Google Maps. And he's like, that's where you were? He's like, yes. And he's like, that's the royal palace. Like, you were trespassing on royal grounds. Later, I went back to that zoo because I thought for sure, anyone can go here. And I did end up running into a zookeeper, I guess, and found out that it was a private royal zoo for one of the princes. And he's like, yeah, you guys can't be here. I was like, okay, good to know. Not coming back. But I got in twice. And they're like, how'd you get here? I was like, I followed that path. Like, clearly you guys need to update your security. Like, if this is private, like, you can't just be having like a very obvious path going straight through all the walls. Anyways, so yeah, probably almost died or got kicked out of the country that day. But I didn't get eaten by a wolf, and the government hasn't contacted me. And that was like many years ago. So I think I'm in the clear.
And when we come back from this break, and I don't know if you've told your parents that story, but I'm sure that your mom had some choice words for you about, oh, fine, you leave here and almost get killed at least twice or three times within your first month. And also, I want to ask you, did you regret your decision to go on a trail run or ride just to see what's on the other side when it could be the end of your life? Well, and we need to take a break. We'll be right back. We're talking with Philip Wilder. Go to philipwilder.com, find out all about him, and you can get his books and stuff. Then we'll be right back.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back into Positive Talk. We're here with the Wild Adventures of Philip Wilder, which is a great name to have wild adventures with, because he's been doing weird stuff, adventuresome stuff.
No, that describes it pretty well. Weird stuff is pretty accurate.
And I'm amazed that so in the zoo that the prince was, it was a private zoo. Were the animals being fed? Did they look well and they had water and all that stuff?
They were fed. They had water. They did not seem very happy, though. I can't say that.
Were they fed tourists?
Were they fed what?
Tourists?
I have no idea what that is. Oh, tourists. Okay.
Tourists. People that you're just wandering by on the path. Maybe that's why they leave the path the way it is.
Yeah, maybe.
So that you will just wander in and never go home.
With big red signs that say, enter here for petting free friendly lions.
Yes, and enter here and you're not leaving again. So But in any event, he's had quite the adventures, and now he's married and all that kind of good stuff. So, by the way, I have to tell you, I was married for 24 years. It was the best 6 months of my life. Just kidding. And so you were gone for 2 years on the mission, and then you came back, and then suddenly, because you were a worldly man, that women started talking to you.
No. The nice thing is you don't have to win every woman on the planet. You just have to win one that you like.
And the odds are
So,
not bad.
yeah, fortunately. So that's kind of actually another crazy story because when I was younger, this does get to answering your question, but this is kind of along the lines of this radio network of sharing like how to live life to the fullest. I really wanted to work at a summer camp, particularly a Christian summer camp. And I wanted to do this ever since I went to a summer camp in sixth grade, I think it was, but I was always too young. And then when I was finally old enough, life got a little crazy. So there's 1 year where I could go and work at the summer camp. I got connected to it I worked at a lawn mowing company, a small lawn mowing company. And the boss is like, hey, I think you do really good at this Christian summer camp that my husband's cousin runs. And it was a small summer camp. And I was like, yeah, I'll try for it. And so I applied, I got accepted. But then God started shutting the doors. And I was like, okay, I really want to do this. I can do this. But I was like, God, if you want me to do this, you got to open this one door. And he didn't. And so I had to tell them no, unfortunately. And I was pretty bummed about it, but it was also like, okay, God, like I trust you. I know that you have good plans. Like if you want me to give up this dream, like I can give up this dream. And so I did. I gave up that dream and I never thought I'd see it again. When I come back from the Middle East, I joined with a college ministry. Somehow that college ministry was connected with the same small summer camp. I didn't know that. And the summer camp sent a message out through all of the staff people saying, hey, if you know any college students who would like to work at a summer camp, please let us know. We'd love to have them, particularly guys. We really need some more guy camp counselors. And when I got that email, my immediate first thought was like, God, I let this dream go. But if you want to open the door for this, like I do not expect you to do anything here, but if you want to open the door for this, I would be so grateful to go and work at the summer camp, because I had totally thought summer camp days were behind me. You know, it's kind of hard to work a summer camp when you have a full-time job, because you just got to leave that job for 3 months and get paid very little, which is fine because it's really fun. Anyways, God opened the doors then for me to be able to work at the summer camp. And it was at that summer camp that I ended up meeting my wife. There were 4 guy counselors and 4 female counselors. And somehow that was where I ended up meeting my wife.
So how did he open the door for you?
The second time?
Yeah.
So the second time I had a ministry assignment to lead this project that was over the same time as the summer camp's training. So I would have missed the training, which then means I wouldn't have really been able to work at the summer camp. And I wanted to stay true to my word that I would lead this ministry event thing that was like 2.5 weeks long. But that was the only year that this ministry, it's called Crush Fear. Basically, it helps college students overcome their fear and trust God with big things. Like public speaking was one of them, or camping alone in the wilderness by yourself. And so I had done that the year before I went to the Middle East. And so I was really excited to go back and be able to lead it. But that 1 year, and this is the only year that it happened, there was like 2 people that signed up for it. And even they like were going to have to miss like a week of it. And so they ended up canceling that. I was like, okay, I guess I can go and work at the summer camp.
Yeah.
I was able to say yes. And it was pretty awesome. So
Oftentimes that does happen when you put your desires and what is going on. Now, one thing I wanted to ask you, because there's a bit of a controversy going on in the world today as to whether or not God has a plan for your life. First of all, a couple things. First of all, why do you call him God? And is God big enough? And secondly, does God determine what we do in life, or do we have free will that he grants us to be able to do whatever we want?
Your first question, why do I call him God? I don't know if I quite understand.
When there are some what is your picture of what God is? Is it a man? Is it an energy? Is it all around us and the universe and the source of everything, or is it, as some people would describe, a man sitting on a throne?
Yeah. Well, I think those are all great sides of God. I don't think they all necessarily capture the wholeness of God, in my belief. As an author, I really like to think of God as the author, because in many ways the logic holds. For example, so Single Isn't Second Best is my nonfiction book, which, sorry, when you asked me those earlier questions, I thought you were asking me about my book, Jake Rogers' Planet. Single Isn't Second Best, I published that 2.5 years ago, and it's still going strong, which is great. But anyways, in regards to writing fiction, because I love writing fiction, whenever I write a book, I could spend 3 months writing a scene that lasts 5 seconds. Or I could spend 5 seconds writing a scene that spans over 3 months.
Yeah.
And so I'm totally outside of time. Everything that happens in the book, like, I'm in control of. And now this is where the analogy breaks down, because I can only create limited characters. Sometimes I do end up taking control and making decisions that's like, oh, wait, I wasn't planning for that. But it makes sense that you'd make that decision. So sometimes I do take control a little bit, but I can only make limited characters that ultimately have to do everything that I tell them to do. I think God is a much greater author than I could ever hope to be. And as a result, he can create people who truly do have free will. Now, him knowing each individual person and knowing the world around us and knowing the future, he can know what's going to happen because he knows every single little implication of that. It's like a 400 dimensional puzzle piece, and we're each a totally unique piece in that puzzle that fits perfectly. Like, we create our own puzzle piece, but that fits perfectly in line with where the puzzle that God's building, if that makes sense.
And why does God do that?
Why does God make the puzzle? Why does God give us free will?
No, why does God why does God tell us? And this is comes from my Lutheran background.
Yeah. Okay.
Tell us that he's in charge. He's in control. Why? He set it up. He created the conditions by which we have to play. As an example, there are rules of nature. As an example, gravity. Gravity is. It's not something that we can decide works or doesn't work. It just is. Everything is. That's a law of the universe. But so why not allow? So you're going to have to help me here, because it doesn't make sense to me that God would be working to be in control of every aspect of our lives when there's so much more for us to do, and to have experience of all kinds of things. And then that also opens up, why do bad things happen to good people? And all of that. When you get that's when it gets really kind of
those are great questions, and questions that we definitely all need to be wrestling with, because they're big questions. Let me see. I hope to answer them as much as possible, and of course, I don't have the full answer.
And by the way, there is no full answer, Philip.
I can answer what I believe.
Of course.
and what has made logical sense to me. Which, as you said earlier, I'm at such a young age. So clearly what I believe will not necessarily be the right answer. But I hope it can make sense to maybe you and a few of the listeners
And
to
just
answer
so
some
you know,
questions that they might have.
it's not a matter of having the right answer or the wrong answer. If it is right in your heart and in your mind, then that's all that matters. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter what anybody else thinks.
Well, it's not so much about right or wrong, but having a good answer.
Well, no, that's a horse of a different color.
Yeah. So in regards to God setting himself up in control, that's an interesting question. I don't know if I've thought a ton about that. There's a few different ways I could look at it. One is oftentimes our experiences when somebody has a lot of power, they oftentimes misuse that power. And I think we have to put a bit of a separation between people and God if we do believe, well, if my God exists and I believe that this God is perfect and wouldn't do anything wrong, because there's really no reason for him to do something wrong. It's not like he can gain anything more. Then him being in control, completely unable to sin. Like, we think of God as being all powerful. And I think one of those powers is not being able to sin, basically not being able to mess up. That sort of person with absolute power is a good thing. That's hard for us to understand. It is and sometimes I don't quite believe that, because every time we see somebody with power, they use it, and we cannot trust people with absolute power. We cannot. But if there is a God who's incapable of sinning, technically that would be great news to know that they have absolute power. Now, here's the other side of that. I don't think God necessarily, I think he wants to be in control for the sake of helping us out. I don't think him personally, he's like, I need to be in control. I think he thinks I need to be in control for their sake, because crazy things can happen. When I say control, I don't mean manipulating every single little aspect of our lives. I mean, like God, like sitting on the throne of the universe or something, which I'm not trying to say that that's what God does necessarily. However, what I can say is, as an author, if me as an author decided not to write the book, there would be no book and there would be no life there.
Correct.
If God decided to not, like, every single element of this book exists because I thought it into existence and because I let it into existence in some sort of way. Now, a good author will try as best as possible to not manipulate their characters and to let their characters make the right decisions, to put them in places to make the right decisions so that they can become as best as, like, the best versions of themselves ultimately. And so I think God in the same way, like if God were to say, like, I'm done being God, I think everything would just simply cease to exist. I love math and science, and I think it's really cool how 1 minus 1 equals 0. And I do think that there is such a thing as antimatter out there, because that mathematically makes sense. At the beginning, there was nothing. Even atheists believe that. There was absolutely nothing. No matter, no nothing, but something split the universe and caused there to be both matter, as we see and feel now, and antimatter. We've never tested it. We've never seen evidence of it, but mathematically it makes sense. And so I think if God simply stepped back and stopped saying, I'm going to maintain all of this, we wouldn't break apart into dust particles. We would simply not exist anymore. And I think that if God is ultimately sustaining the entire universe, and that each and every one of us is breathing and their heart is beating because God is actively sustaining them and thinking of them and causing that to be. Just like my world before I put it into a book format. I mean, ultimately, all that this book is trying to do is communicate what I have in my head to other people. This is not the world. Reading it is not the world. When people read the book, they create their own versions of the world based on what they've read. But the world that I created is in my head. And if I were to stop thinking about it, or if I were to die, that world is gone. And all that's left is traces of that from what I've put out into the world. So
although
I think
now it's a book, and so everybody gets to read that. And by
yes.
the way, we're talking with Philip Weiler. By the way, young man, you're doing a great job of
Thank you.
answering questions that are just not answerable, because Yeah, who knows? And here's the thing that I tell people. We're going to find out. I'm going to find out a whole bunch sooner than you will, but eventually we're going to find out what's actually going on because
Mhm.
our body's going to cease working, and then we're going to go home, and that's going to take care of that. We're talking with Philip Wilder. We're going to talk about his book when we come back, his science fiction book that I want you to go get. And we'll be right back. And if you go to philipwilder.com, you'll find out all about him and all the adventures he's had. By the way, on our way out, are you going to create a book about your adventures at one point?
I technically partially already have, which maybe we can talk about that book in just a minute. But
I
just
thought
for
that
everyone
book was.
listening, Philip is with one L. I know that
Oh,
tends to
very
cause
good.
confusion.
I had no idea. So, and so is that book out? The one we were
Yeah,
talking about? Oh,
it was
I
my
thought.
first book.
Okay. Well, hold on. We'll be right back. Oh, I know the one where you're falling off the cliff. I like that one.
You got it.
Yeah. Hold on. We'll be right back.
When the game is on the line, championship teams know the game plan. They communicate and work together to win. We all need a game plan to protect ourselves online. Talk to family and friends so they know how to stay safe too. Create strong passwords, turn on multi-factor authentication, update software, and recognize and report phishing, because online safety is not something you want to fumble. Get more game-winning tips at cisa.gov/secure our world. Then share them with family and friends.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. And by the way, just so you all know, Brachelle's not here because she's traveling today, and I'm hopeful that she'll be back next week and stuff like that. But in any event, Philip Wilder is here. He likes her a lot. As a matter of fact, when we were starting the show, he said, "Isn't Brachelle coming?" And I said, well, she's traveling. So anyway, we called her and they talked and so all that stuff. So anyway, tell us about your first book, because it's called Discovering God's Calling. And did you discover your God's calling?
For the time being.
See, and that's a beauty of the whole thing, because the experiences that you gather through life, and what will end up happening is, because you're still a young guy, but as you gather all of these experiences, both good and bad, or good and not so good, you learn through them all, and it helps you develop into a really well-rounded, positive human being if you choose to, or it can ruin you. You get to choose. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you
think? Yeah. So my book, Discovering God's Calling, this, you asked, have I written a book about my adventures? This is not necessarily a book about my adventures. This is a book about taking your strengths and your passions and talents and using them to follow God and serve God, according to the non-denominational Christian perspective. So this might not necessarily apply to everyone, but before you ask, because I know, Kevin, you're thinking this, how did I get this picture, right?
Yeah, that's a great picture, by the way.
Yes. Well, I jumped off a cliff. No, just kidding. The picture's sideways. So that's the ground, not a cliff. I did kind of a one handstand for about 2 seconds. Really, I was attempting a full handstand and did not fully accomplish it, but it looked really cool sideways, and so we kept it. And it causes a lot of confusion because people are like, how did you get that picture? Which should be extra confusing because the sun from this angle is coming from below.
Well, do you know what's even more confusing?
Yes.
A one-arm handstand. I have no idea how you accomplish that.
Well, back when I was fit, no. So the real tricky part was this was a very small rock. I did not have much space, and I did not want to fall off the rock. Have you ever heard of Goblin Valley State Park?
I've heard of it, never been.
Okay, there's these weird rock formations all over Goblin Valley, and this is on the top of one of those rock formations. So if I slipped and misstepped, I would have fallen like 8 feet. Did not want to do that. So that was the harder part about it. But really, I mean, as you can tell, it's not really a full handstand. I was up in the air like that for maybe half a second. I was just running, put my hand down, and kind of flipped over my arm a little bit. But
I think it's great. And so to be clear, we've got 3 books out and you've got another book that's coming, yeah?
Let's start from the beginning here. I have written 9 fiction novels. Only one of them is published. Another 2 are ready for publication, just waiting for the right time and the right publisher. So 3 potentially. Working on a 4th. And I have 2 nonfiction books. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at. I've got 2 books that could come out pretty soon, just waiting for the right timing and the right contract. So if you are a publisher listening right now, love to work with you. But yeah, it's a lot of fun writing these books, and I just can't stop. It's just
Well,
what I am.
By the way, nor should you, because
Yes.
number one, your books are being well received,
Thank you.
and you write well, and you've got an opinion and something to say, and so you should say it. But I'm curious to know, when you're talking about the books that are done but they're not published, and you're waiting for something. What are you waiting for?
Something. I started trying to get my books traditionally published back in 2015, which you might be thinking, oh my gosh, are you even old enough to be alive back then? Yes.
Well, you were maybe 15, 16, 17 at the time.
I was 21. I'm turning 32 this August. So
you are not. You're too young. You're too young for that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, sure. Let's just believe I'm 25 still. That would be nice.
That'd be nice. Yes.
Anyway, so I started seeking publication at that age, and it's a lot of work. Publishing these days is a whole lot harder. I mean, it's a whole lot easier if you want to cut corners, because you can self-publish, but it's a whole lot harder to get a traditional publisher to pick you up than it was 20 years ago.
That's
because
true.
now we have this thing called the internet, and now we have things called computers. So anyone can write a book. Before it was like, well, can you type out a book without errors? Like, that's kind of crazy. Now it's like, well, anyone can edit it. Anyone can go through all this process to get a finished manuscript, quote unquote finished. And then it just comes down to getting a publisher to publish you. But now a lot of publishers expect you to do a bunch of the work and get the word out there. And if you don't have 100,000 followers on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, whatever, then why would they publish with you? Why not publish with that other person that does have all those followers, who they know we're going to get probably at least 5,000-10,000 sales from their followers alone, not including any of the work that we put into it. So that's where it's a lot harder.
Yeah, it is. And it also means that you've got to do a lot of your own self-marketing and getting the words out there about it, and doing the things that book sellers and all that kind of stuff. And, like doing podcasts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So if you go to, and you've got less than 1 minute, but if we go to philipwilder.com, you can find out all about the books, and you can get them. Anything that you'd like to add, sir, in 30 seconds or 45 seconds?
Yeah. Also, you can find me on Instagram or Facebook, Philip_Wilder_author. I'm also on YouTube. You can find me there, but more so focused on Instagram. My newest book, Jake Rogers' Planet, is just a fun adventure. If you like Hatchet or The Martian, this is kind of like both of them mixed. There are Christian elements in it, mostly that we don't need to be afraid when we're following with God, because God is in control. Even though crazy things might be happening, like being stranded on an alien planet all by yourself, you don't know what to eat, don't know what to drink, don't know what animals are hunting you, don't know if you'll ever see another human again. Even in that situation, you do not need to be afraid. So if you like either of those books, or if you just like Christian fiction, or if you're just curious, check it out. It's on Amazon. It's on Audible. It would be a huge support for me, and I would love to write more books, but it requires a lot of funding and a lot of time. And so anyone who wants to support me in that, you can find it on Amazon. And I really hope that you enjoy it and love it. And I think you will. There's pictures in it too. So I know that appeals to some people.
It's a picture book. I could read that. So Philip Wilder has been our guest. Go to philipwilder.com and do all of that. Buy his books, and you can probably even donate to the cause if you choose to. And I want to thank you for being here, young man.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's always a blast, and thank you all for listening. It is so fun, and I would love to connect with each of you. Please reach out. I have my email on my website.
And there you go. Again, that that website is Philip with one L, Wilder.com. Thank you so much, young man.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got.